Howdy doodly, and welcome to I Read Books and Stuff. I'm your host Jonah, and today I'm doing the top 10 most influential books tag. This tag was created by Read Susie Reed. I'm not sure. If I'm wrong, please forgive me. But if I am right, then hooray! I thought this tag was very important to do because I felt like if you do this tag, then I'm getting closer to you, the viewer, and I think we can get to know each other a little better. And if I'm doing this, and you're doing your thing by watching me, I feel like we have to have some sort of connection, and you have to know me at least a little bit. And I think the best way to do that is to talk to you through books, and that just sounds awesome. I'm not sure if that was the original purpose of the tag, but that's what I'm using it for. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 10 might be a little weird, but it is Beautiful Darkness by Cami Garcia and Margaret Stoll. Now, if you follow me on Goodreads or friends with me on Goodreads, or have seen any of my past videos, you know that I despise this book, and this book is basically diarrhea and garbage folded in between two covers and sold out to everybody. And I was really disappointed. I didn't even love the first one. I thought it was alright. I liked it. Didn't love it. This book was absolutely just trash. And, that is why it's most influential. What, Jonah? Well, basically, this book taught me how to hate books. I've disliked books in the past before I read this book, but this book, it showed me the ways of how to hate books. I didn't know that I could hate, words on pages so much until I read this book, and that's a big life lesson, because you have to know how to hate something and how to dislike something, because some things are worth hating and some things you don't have to hate. I had to hate this book because it was awful, but some things you can't fret over, like I'm fretting over this book, and I probably shouldn't, but it's very therapeutic to find your battles and to not fret over books like I am. I'm a horrible influence. Moving on. Carrie by Stephen King is number 9, and I read this kind of recently, so it might be kind of surprising. But this book, it taught me that you can only do so much to one person, and it kind of taught me, because I get bullied sometimes at school, and it taught me that I shouldn't release all my anger out into the world. I should talk to friends. Carrie didn't have friends any in this book. I'm not going to spoil it, even though you probably know how it ends. But basically, I feel like that if I didn't know this lesson, then I wouldn't know where to go, because basically this book ends with disaster, and it's just because he bullied her. It taught me not to put my anger out on other people, because some people in this book, they just took it out on her, and it taught me that I shouldn't take my anger out on other people. I should talk to friends and release it, and release my anger in a peaceful way, and not destroying the entire city. Cough, cough. This is a really valuable lesson, but the only reason that it's so low on my list is because I kind of learned that lesson from the movie, because I watched it way before I read the book, and yeah, that's the only reason that's so low. If I actually learned this lesson from reading the book first, then it probably would have been higher. But yeah, I kind of learned it from the movie, but I learned it more from the book. Moving on. The next book, I do not have a physical copy with me, but I do, it's called Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher, and the author is Bruce something, and he wrote the whole Magic Shop series. I didn't know it was a series, and this isn't part of the inspirational part, but fun fact, I I read this whenever I was in 3rd grade, which is why it has such a vital importance that I learned. But I read another Magic Shop book, and I thought it was, I forget what it was. I think it had something to do with about a skull. I don't remember the title of it. Maybe I'll Google it. but I remember reading it, and every single one of the books, they only have one thing in common, I think. And one, the main protagonist learns a good lesson, and two, he or she always goes into the same magic shop. And I just remember reading that Skull book whenever I was in 3rd grade and thinking it was just like Jeremy Thatcher, Dragon Hatcher, and I remember just like laying it down on my desk and sliding it over and being like, this is stupid, because I loved Jeremy Thatcher, Dragon Hatcher so much that I refused to think that any other book could possibly take any notes off that. It seemed like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. But anyways, the reason that this is so influential is because, phone's vibrating, is because this book, I read this when I was in 3rd grade, like I said, and I told my teacher that I wanted to read an adult book. I didn't mean like an adult book like it had adult themes or anything like that. I just meant that I wanted a big book. Not really like page length big, but like big that it took a big toll on my heart. I don't think I realized that as a child. I think I told the teacher that I wanted a book that made me feel something, and she gave me this book, and she said, "You'll learn something." And I did learn something. I learned something so valuable. I learned that I'm not gonna spoil it. No, it's not even a middle grade. It's like a kid's book. But I learned that no matter how much you love something, it's most likely going to go. And I already lost something. I lost my grandmother to breast cancer whenever I was like in preschool, but I didn't really grasp the idea of death then. And nobody dies in this book. But Dragon, he loses something. I think you can tie it together. I learned so much from that book. I learned that death is a thing, and it happens, and you can't do anything about it. And I couldn't survive without that life lesson. And I learned that even though nobody died in that book, I don't remember, but I know that nobody died. Even though that happened, I think that, I'm not sure, but I think that the original plan was to have the dragon die, but maybe the publisher said that was too dark. But I got the idea anyways, and I realized that this has happened to me, and that I need to learn more about it. And yeah, that's basically what I learned from this book. I learned that you're going to lose stuff, and sometimes you can't help it. And I think I remember losing a toy or something in my room and saying, I can't help losing something, because I think it had like a truism at the end of that. But yeah, that's what I learned. I learned that you can lose something in many different ways, but no matter what, sometimes you're not going to get it back. And maybe that's for the better. In this book it was, some cases it isn't, but you have to live with that either way. I'm gonna get off my pedestal now. The next book on the list is Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins, and this book has a similar lesson to me, like Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher, but it taught me more so. I know that one of the things that Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher taught me was that you can lose something even if you don't think you're going to lose it, and even if you don't think that you're going to care if you lose it. And if you read this book, you know that some of it wasn't fantastic. Even if you rated it 5 stars, everybody had their issues with this book. My issue was that I thought it was bland, and I thought that the characters I loved were just meaningless. I'm not going to spoil it, but if you read the book, you know that the main 2 depressing parts were a boy dying and a girl dying. I'm not going to say who those boy or girl are, obviously, but you know that you cried at least one. Don't lie, you cried at least one of those deaths. I know I did. I cried one of them. I'm not going to tell you which one, but it taught me that even though you think that you're not going to care, you're going to care if somebody dies. And I know, or you lose somebody. And I thought, even though that I knew it in my heart that the person wasn't going to die, but they died. Yeah, and I know I kind of learned that lesson from Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher, but this book stressed it because it was the Hunger Games. And I know in the Hunger Games, you win or you die. That's the whole thing. But it's just, it's hard to explain, but I don't know why this has more of a toll on me than Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher. I think it's because maybe I read this later on, and obviously I read it later than 3rd grade, but this book took so much more of a toll on me. Probably because it's the 3rd book in the series, and I knew that it was going to end with this, even though I was used to having another book. But, whatever. Moving on. Next question. The next book in the list is, I think it's number 6. Number 6 on the list is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. This book taught me another life lesson about death. Yippity hoo ha. But this book taught me that even though you know that you're going to die, you have to make yourself live. You have to live until you die. And it also taught me that if living is more than just surviving. And that's so valuable. And I just thought that this book inspired me so much to live, even though one day I'm going to die. And you, viewer, who are watching this, unless you are immortal, you are going to die too. And I think that's from this list. No, that's from The Book Thief, which I haven't read. I don't know how I know that. Moving on. This book taught me that even though you're going to die, you have to live first. And that's valuable. That's some valuable stuff right there. Number 5 is Winter's Bone by Daniel Woodrill. This book taught me that no matter how far-fetched a goal seems, if you work hard enough and you believe enough, then you can achieve that goal, no matter what it is. The next book, the number 4, is Boy Meets Boy by David Levithan, and this is another book that I read kind of recently. But this book taught me that no matter what or who I am, I'm going to be loved, but first I have to love myself. The next book might be surprising as well, but it is The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. This book made me want to read. I remember this was the first book I ever read, I think. This was the first book I ever read on my own, and I think it took me about a month. No, I didn't have enough attention span. I think it took me about a week or so, maybe a day. I don't know. Moving on. This book, it made me want to read. I mean, I remember, like, I just adored it. Oh, look, pretty inside cover. But I remember that I don't even know how to explain it. Without this book, I would have never started reading. This book, it had amazing plot, and it made me sad, and it made me learn so much, and this is probably the book that had the most life lessons for me. It may not have taken that much of a toll on me, because I was like 3 whenever I started reading it or so, I don't know. But look at that scary face. That face terrified me. No offense. But that face terrified me as a child. Yeah, this book it made me read. Without this book, I would have never been here. I would have never started reading. Yada yada yada. Moving on. The number 2 is Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. And this book, it didn't teach me that much, but what it did teach me, it blew me away. This book was amazing, in case you didn't know, and it taught me that life is beautiful, and it taught me that everybody is different, and it taught me that life evolves as you go on, and it taught me that sometimes you're speechless whenever you're trying to say what a book taught you. Moving on. The next book, the final book, number 1, is a book that I do not have, but it is called The Giver by Lois Lowry, and it is one of the best books I've ever read in my life. The reason being, it taught me how to be who I am. It basically taught me that I am a person who is living on a big earth with a bunch of other people, and I am different than everybody else. And people are hiding things from me, and people lie, and sometimes that's not okay, but sometimes it shields me from what's actually going on. And I never read the other books, but I'm planning to soon. So yeah, that is the top 10 most influential books. I hope you enjoyed, and see you later. Bye bye.